Welcome back to more Warhammer lore. In today's video we will once again be visiting the Tomb Kings of Khemri, but this time we will be focusing on the Mortuary Cult, including what the Mortuary Cult is, who runs it, and delve into the Tomb King afterlife and the magic lore associated that has come about since the rebirth of the Tomb Kings. If you have not seen my Tomb King Society and or the Pantheon video, I would recommend watching those first before this one, as I'm going to assume you are relatively familiar with the Tomb Kings in general and their deities in question. The Mortuary Cult is the product of the first uniter of the lands that would become Nehekhara, Setra the Imperishable. Setra understood that in order to actually unite Khemri, he would need to have the backings of the gods, and so he sacrificed his children to show his dedication to the Nehekharan pantheon and receive the blessings of his deities. And he managed to not only unite Khemri, but turn it into a modern superpower during their golden age. But despite this, Setra being a great and powerful ruler, he was still but a man, and the ravages of time began to sap his strength. Setra did not think this was fair, that he should pass on when there was so much more he could accomplish, and so he founded what we now know as the Mortuary Cult. Cults in Nehekhara were not considered taboo, and in fact many cults existed dedicated to the various deities of the Khemrian pantheon and were seen as more of a priestly order than a cult as we think of today. However, the Mortuary Cult was different. It was not dedicated to any one god, and Setra had many of the brightest and aspiring members of society, ranging from healers to leaders and followers of the other cults, brought together for one of his last commandments. Setra tasked the Mortuary Cult with finding a way for the great king to live forever. This resulted in the birth of the Lich priests, whom in Setra's lifetime did make great strides in elongating his lifespan, as well as that of themselves. But they could not stop him or themselves from dying, and before the great king passed, the cult assured him that they would bring him back to life, and he would reign again in his glorious, preserved form for all eternity. This is where the art of embalming was said to be discovered, though if you've seen my society video, you would know that the Nehekharan society in general has greatly borrowed from that of the lizardmen, whom at this time already have practiced embalming of the sacred dead. And so I believe that this secret may have in fact been borrowed from the nearby lizardmen and repurposed through the trial and error of the Lich priests to preserve a human corpse from decay. And so Setra was embalmed and entombed in a great pyramid, along with an army and various other slaves and servants he would need in his next life. And true to their word, the Mortuary Cult did not stop searching for a cure for death for many generations to come. The priesthood also devised a vast lore of magical incantations and rituals intended to bind the souls of the dead kings back into their royal bodies, enabling them, as well as their entire courts and armies, to be awakened from death. The first generations of Lich priests whose skills and knowledge were rudimentary died after prolonging their lives far beyond their natural lifespan. They passed on their knowledge to the next generation of priests, who exceeded them in wisdom and expertise. In this way, their knowledge accumulated until the fifth generation of priests who did not die, though their bodies slowly withered away until they were little more than living corpses. Since the king depended on the Mortuary Cult's knowledge and loyalty in order to live beyond his own death, the Lich priests held great power in ancient Nehekhara. Indeed, Lich priests were the only subjects whom could not be executed. In this way, the priesthood became a formidable power beyond many thrones. The Lich priests acted as advisors and viziers to the kings of Nehekhara, and their status was second only to that of the ruling families. In fact, it became a common practice for the kings and royal families to honor Setra's sacrifice to the gods by offering their firstborn son to join the Mortuary Cult. Now, there were no females in the Mortuary Cult, and this was seen as a great honor to be a member of this society that was striving to conquer death. Now, the lore does contradict itself slightly when talking about the order of which son was offered, the first or the second son. It could be either or, but in Nagash's story in particular, which we will not be covering today in its entirety, Nagash himself mentions that it is unfair that he should have to join the priesthood while his brother is groomed to rule, when in any other culture he would be the one becoming king and not his brother. For this reason, I believe that Nagash was the older brother in this situation, as the neighboring barbarian tribes and even the royalty of Cathay, other human civilizations that the Nehekarans would have known about, followed this style of inheritance with the oldest inheriting the throne. Therefore, I believe it is safe to assume that the firstborn was offered up to the Mortuary Cult in honor of Cetra's sacrifice and to bring them closer to the gods. It is also of importance to note that the ruling family of Nehekara at the time is ritually married to a kind of high priestess of one of the other cults in question, and this is supposed to represent the bond that Cetra made, the pact that he made with the gods, and if anything were to befall her, something terrible indeed would happen to the Nehekaran people, and this did in fact come to pass in the story of Nagash. But once again, we will not be going too detailed into this right now, and we will visit this at a later date. So let's refocus on the Lich priests of the Mortuary Cult. Now, in each necropolis, with the burial pyramids of the Tomb Kings at its core, there is a temple dedicated to the Nehekaran Mortuary Cult, and it is here where the Lich priests preside. Here resides the Lich High Priest, served by many lesser priests. Only the High Priests have been initiated into the deepest secrets of the cult. In addition to the rituals of summoning, Lich priests have many duties to perform in the necropolis, including renewing the seals upon the portals of the tomb vaults, maintaining the incantations of preservation, remaking inscriptions which may have become eroded by wind-blown sand, determining the moment of a Tomb King's awakening, and consulting the spirit of the Tomb King by means of oracles. The Lich priests continue to perform these duties for centuries because they cannot die a natural death. Cursed forever by their own lust for immortality, long ago the Lich priests used their accumulated knowledge to trap their own souls within their bodies, and in so doing, they extended their lives far beyond those of mortal men. However, while their spirits never passed into the realm of souls, their bodies have withered with the passing of centuries, and it is their spirit alone that now animates their forms. Without realizing it, the entire priesthood cursed itself, not to eternal life, but to eternal undeath. Lich priests' physical bodies are now little more than withered corpses. This brings to mind the age-old saying, "Be careful what you wish for," as the Lich priests obviously did not think out completely what would happen to their bodies while they continued to live for all eternity. For there is a drastic difference between eternal life and eternal youth. Now, we did just mention the realm of souls, so what exactly is the realm of souls? The realm of souls is the revered afterlife of the ancient Nehekarans. It was believed that upon death, the deceased's spirit would enter the realm of souls, also known as the underworld or the netherworld. Here, the kings of Nehekara would reside in fantastic palaces until such a time as a golden paradise worthy of their status was prepared, whereupon they would rule for 1,000,000 years. It would be filled with all their servants, soldiers, and worldly possessions, and so these were necessarily buried beside their monarchs upon their deaths. However, not all inhabitants in the realm of souls would be afforded such a luxury, for in the lowest levels, the cursed and the damned would be subjected to an eternity of torture for their sins. Only the wretches, the unworthy, and the traitors of Nehekaran society were condemned to this, and the idea of those of noble blood could be damned to such a fate was completely unthinkable. The Lich priests of the Mortuary Cult believe that their magical powers originate from the realm of souls. With the proper incantations, the Lich priests are able to summon forth the spirits of deceased warriors from this mystical plane and bind them into the corporeal bodies to fight for Nehekara once more. Now, we have discussed in many of our other lore videos from the different societies that the realms of chaos exist, and technically anything that a vast number of people believe in actually becomes reality in the realms of chaos. So this glorious afterlife should actually exist, and therefore anything that these Lich priests come up with, as long as enough of them believe it and they believe it fervently, that all this does come to pass. So there is a realm of souls where the dead live essentially in either a version of heaven or a version of hell, essentially, and the spirits can be pulled from there into the living realm. Therefore, the Lich priests are capable of doing exactly what they've set out to do. This is a rather in-depth topic, and one day I will dedicate an entire video to it in its entirety, and I might be confusing some of you even more slightly as to why the Lich priests have to reanimate these corpses when Nagash's great spells originally raised almost every corpse back to unlife back when it was cast. This is where Grand Hierophant Katep and Cetra come into play. Now, I will be doing individual lore videos on each of these characters, but needless to say, the Land of the Dead was thrown into complete chaos after Nagash was killed for the first time, and only with the awakening of Cetra was the chaos quelled and order established, and now the Land of the Tomb Kings. And one of Cetra's first edicts was to place the majority of the Tomb Kings back into their eternal slumber, so as to control the amount of opposition to his rule of each individual city had. This also made it easier for the Imperishable to rely on his relatively loyal brethren to watch over the kingdoms while he set out on a few crusades, as well as give him time to think on what the kingdoms of Nehekhara should be striving to do in the future. So as a result, the majority of the fighting strengths of the Tomb Kings of Khemri are in fact asleep back in their tombs and crypts, and therefore when large armies need to be raised, when Cetra calls for war, the Lich priests gather to answer the call. Hunched and frail, their dry wizened skins are stretched like old parchment over the brittle skeletons. Each is garbed in an elaborate headdress, and clutched in their skeletal hands are ritual knives and rune-inscribed staffs, which act as both the Lich priests' crutches and symbols of office. The Lich priests believe the winds of magic to be the breath of the gods, a power that connects the mortal world to the realms beyond. The magical incantations of Nehekharan Lich priests have been perfected over a millennia, and they have remained unchanged since that time. The wording of each and every incantation is recorded on dusty papyrus scrolls written in the mysterious hieroglyphs of Nehekhara's ancient language. Uttered in long, monotonous rituals, the incantations of the Lich priests must be precisely pronounced, for the slightest mistake can incite the wrath of the gods. It is not unknown for the angered deities to snap the bones of the offending Lich priest, set his form ablaze, or even rend his soul asunder as punishment. Such are the risks when harnessing the power of the gods. These magical backlashes when performing feats of magic and or miracles, as the Lich priests would probably assume they would be, are not very uncommon in the Warhammer world, though it is of note that the Nehekharan lore of magic is relatively more stable than most lores of magic. And this, it isn't miscast as often, because it is practiced religiously for millennia, so these people are experts of their craft. Now, the lore of Nehekhara is in fact the final aspect of the Mortuary Cult I believe is worth going over, as it is extremely different from the standard form of necromancy performed by the vampire counts and the various wandering necromancers throughout the Warhammer world. Lich Priest magic, also known as the lore of Nehekhara, is the magic used by Nehekharan Lich priests of the Tomb Kings. The magic is based on long, monotonous chants that connects the mortal world to the realms beyond. The wording of these arcane spells has been recorded on dusty papyrus written in High Nehekharan. These incantations, uttered in rituals unchanged for uncountable millennia, cannot reach the peaks of power achieved by the perverted versions used in Nagash's own necromancy, but are far more reliable. One major difference is that the Lich priests do not summon regiments in the same way the vampire counts do. They can revitalize the units they have, but they cannot raise fresh recruits from the dirt the way the vampire counts can summon zombies and skeletons. Therefore, their units are far more precious than that of the standard undead. For this reason, the majority of the spells in the lore of Nehekhara are buffs for your troops, ranging from increased vigor to accuracy for archers, to protecting your units from harm, and of course increasing their combat potential. In a way, it is similar to the lore of light, but it also has the effects of death that you would expect from an undead faction, with spells that suck the moisture from the enemy, turning them into withered husks, to a summoning of spirits that drain the life force of the enemy, and of course summoning skeletal hands to drag down their foes into the depths of Isurian's kingdom. So, when taking into account the lore of Nehekara is almost an odd combination of the lore of light and the lore of death, which is rather fitting as the Tomb Kings in their own way are both a parody of life and of death. And with that, I am ending this video on the Mortuary Cult. Not a very long one, not as long as my usual videos, but I felt like we covered most of the important aspects of the Mortuary Cult, and I hope that you learned something new today. And as always, if I made any mistakes or you would like some clarification on a topic, go ahead and leave a comment down in the comment section and I will answer it to the best of my ability. And or I do plan on doing a Q&A video in the near future. I won't give you a set time. It'll be in the next couple weeks. I plan on doing another Q&A video, and I will be dredging up a lot of comments I've gotten, questions that is, and putting them in the video for all of you guys to hear, since not all of you read the comments. So I know I don't read the comments of my favorite YouTubers as well, so if you don't, I will be providing them in that way. Now, if you are new to the channel, I do encourage you to both like the video and subscribe to the channel. I do my best to post lore content weekly or more often, and if you would like to stay informed, subscribing is the best way to do that. Also, I'd like to say that to all of my loyal subscribers, I appreciate your patronage, and as long as you are watching, I will continue to make lore content for you. I do enjoy making these videos, and I appreciate all of the support. As always, I have been Jumbo Thick. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all again very soon. Have a good day.